Will everything change for Classic WoW in 6 months? We're about to find out.
Last month, Classic WoW turned 4 years old. We went through
It's crazy how old the game is already, right?
We crossed the Dark Portal into TBC, and we are well on our way to finishing up in Northrend. All of this in a far shorter space of time than it took originally, too. Back then, it would have been just over 6 years to get from Vanilla to Cata. For us, it'll be less than that for sure. How much?
You know what? I actually bet they're gonna do this, and they're gonna make a WoW Cataclysm Classic. Like, there's no way they're not gonna do that. Like, look at what they have done so far. It's not just WoW Classic. We got WoW TBC Classic. And then they still got, like, Wrath of the Lich King Classic. At some point, they're going to do a Cataclysm Classic. Even if it's in 5 years from now. It doesn't matter. They're gonna do this at some point. I'm actually positive about it. Because the numbers will drop so heavily over the next years in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. I think they are already actually dropping quite a lot, right? Because more people get to endgame, and then at some point they just stop playing, unless they are maybe like some hardcore PvP player, right? So yeah, I'm sure we're getting Cataclysm.
For us, it'll be less than that for sure. How much less though? Well, I suspect BlizzCon at the start of November will likely hold those answers for us. And just as the game changed so much from 2006 to late 2010, our Classic has indeed gone through many changes too. Back at the end of 2019 in the release of Classic, the majority of the community was full on no changes. Coming off the back of Battle for Azeroth, the second, not terribly well received retail expansion in a row, many were wary that Blizzard may seek to add features to Classic to modernize the game and take away from the Classic experience. And the players wanted that full-on Classic experience.
But here's also a problem. And this is something I really don't get sometimes by Blizzard. Like, they focus a lot on the existing player base. And there's nothing wrong. Like, you want a loyal player base, right? Like, you want people to stay around. But if a game gets really, really old over time, shouldn't they just make a 2? Like a World of Warcraft 2 or something? Like, we are constantly focusing here too much on keeping the old players engaged. What about the young generation? What about, like, people that just turned 21 or 20 or something and they're looking for some cool game to get into, right? Like, there needs to be more attraction for new players that play World of Warcraft for the first time, because right now it's all about surviving rather than growing, right? And it's kind of strange. Like, what does Blizzard want from their product, World of Warcraft? Do they want people to with 50 years or 60 to still play the game and they don't have any younger players? Or do they also want to attract new players? And right now it's like super confusing what they are trying to do here. So we have like WoW Classic, and it's really fun. It's cool for like us old school players, including myself, right? But what about like players that just want to play a game for the first time, or that maybe now want to try MMO and they never played an MMO before? Like, what kind of options do they have? Like, right now, if you start retail as a new player, you are very confused because nothing in the story makes any sense. You start either with a BFA starting experience or the super classic kind of one, the vanilla one. For example, you make a human paladin and you're in the Elwyn forest and you're like leveling there, and then suddenly some guy appears and calls you to the Shadowlands to BFA, and suddenly there's like some issue on the Dragon Isles and you have like no clue what's going on in the world, right? That's why I always recommend for like new players, try Classic WoW, because the plot, the story is less confusing. But if you play Classic WoW as a new player, you're like, oh, what is this? The graphics, this is so pixelated. It doesn't look good at all. It looks ugly. It looks like this game is 30 years old or something. And this is the issue we have right now. Like, Classic is great for new players, right? But when it comes to like modern standards, it's totally outdated. Also from graphics, engine, and all that kind of stuff. You're not gonna attract really a 18-year-old or 19-year-old player that wants to try for the first time an MMO with Classic WoW, unfortunately. Even though it's a really good game, this is also my youth, my teenage years where I was like playing WoW for the first time. It was a blast. But can we give the same kind of experience to someone that's now around that age or early adulthood in 2023? That's the big question. So Blizzard, they need to think about something if they want to keep the Warcraft franchise alive. Either they make a Warcraft 4 soon, And from that, they make like maybe in the future a World of Warcraft 2. That is one option, something I recommend, because we can introduce completely new characters. Or we do some sort of World of Warcraft 2 without the Warcraft 4 and as a time skip. I think that's also good.
With all the warts in
like 100 years later plot or
not
something.
Perfect, it certainly
Completely
did bring back a
independent.
version of the game we've never really seen before. We had world buffs and people trying to grief them, PvP ranking in the open world before battlegrounds, and your heals not going off thanks to spell batching, and so many more fond memories. Whereas in WoW Classic now, we have had tons of general gameplay updates, and many more to come in the final patch. And let's face it, it doesn't make a ton of sense to put in general gameplay updates such as these for literally the last content patch of the current expansion, and for that to be it. We aren't going to kill the Lich King and then see a credit screen rolling saying thanks for playing, you beat the game, and then your character gets deleted and you have to go outside or something. This whole classic thing, be it in expansions or going back to vanilla, really is the gift that keeps on giving for Blizzard. Then again, I do get it. For a bunch of people out there, it's already decided in your mind. The journey ends with Arthas. Wrath of the Lich King is
that's how Wrath of the Lich King ends.
After all, you know what's going to be happening next in the game, don't you? And you know what? I remember how many times I read that people were stopping Classic after.
That's my issue I have with Classic. I had the same with TBC and Wrath of the Lich King Classic. I was very hyped and happy for it. When I heard they announced, oh, there will be Wrath of the Lich King Classic, like, I can't wait to get to Northrend again, right? But I was only, like, with my excitement about maybe 60%. Yeah, I would say around 60% the excitement that I had back in the day when I got to Northrend for the first time ever, right? Because it's just a re-release of something that already exists. Like, this is what I don't get. Why they don't just copy-paste everything from classic WoW on something modern? What I mean by that is, like, really have a time skip, like some World of Warcraft game that takes, like, 100 years later place after Dragon Eyes or something. Everything is just like classic WoW, like mobs are difficult, you have to manually find groups, less group finder. Like the whole concept of like how World of Warcraft used to be in the vanilla games, but that on modern technology. I think that would be the best MMO out there. Like people are saying Ashes of Creation is going to become the best new MMO. But I think there's potential for World of Warcraft 2 if it's just like classic WoW with modern technology and a whole new plot where we don't go to like Northrend, but maybe to some volcano and there's some evil necromancer or something, not Arthas, and the story is about there's some evil necromancer that was maybe some famous archmage in Dalaran, kind of like Kel'Thuzad, but just not a lich but still alive, right? And he wants to, I don't know, raise 1 million zombies and attack Azeroth or something, and he's on some volcano island. And I don't know, maybe he has a cousin or brother that's actually a good character that is very important in the story. Like, there are so many cool plots they could come up with and have everything from leveling, PvP, combat, like classic WoW, just with modern technology. Yo, that would be the best MMO ever.
The Kel'Thuzad
not re-release stuff
in vanilla, that they weren't going to be playing TBC or later returning for Wrath. And I don't know, I'm just saying, between Wrath at the moment, albeit quite raid loggy, and the new resurgence of Classic on Era and Hardcore, I reckon the player base is still in a
Wrath of
pretty
Lich King
spot.
Plus.
But as mentioned, Vanilla to Cataclysm was about 6 years of the game's history. Next year is coming up to a massive 20-year anniversary for the World of Warcraft MMORPG, and as much as the perceived vanilla era of the game was absolutely an important part of its history, by now there is much more that's came after that than during. People will have started World of Warcraft at all points through different expansions. There'll be people who started in the Dragon Soul patch of Cataclysm, midway through Warlords of Draenor, or even Battle for Azeroth, and for those players, that's when they actually got into the game. So they're probably going to look back well on those experiences they had then, even if the wider player base seems to think that those points in the game were bad for whatever reason. And if you know you prefer the more original vanilla feeling of the game, then that option is currently there for you. It's not like we're getting either progression past Wrath of the Lich King or content for vanilla. At the moment it's the best of both worlds, or at least it seems to be that way. And when I say best of both worlds is that Cataclysm seems to be happening based upon the large recent gameplay updates. And if you didn't know, Blizzard have already said they're working on a new seasonal server for vanilla as well. And to be honest, what sets Classic apart as a game when compared to any other expansion at the moment feels as though that's the reason why it's currently seeing a huge surge in players. Many make out vanilla, TBC and Wrath as that original timeless trio, but having played and replayed them now, vanilla really has started to show itself standing out more and more. Not Cata, nor Wrath, nor even TBC had the same gameplay structure as Classic, and that structure is the main reason a lot of people are going back to it right now. As cheesy and overstated as it is, it's all about the journey, not the destination, has really been cemented to me as a big reason why vanilla does so well when compared to expansions. During expansions, the content really begins at the previous expansion's level cap. All that leveling that takes place before is kind of just a hurdle that Blizzard keep accelerating.
I actually love the leveling experience in Classic WoW. If I grind up a character in Classic WoW to max, I have so much more fun than I do this than if I do this on retail. Like, retail is kind of strange with the time walking and the whole chromie thing. I'm not really liking this concept very much. I think like leveling in Classic WoW is just so much more fun. It's quite challenging, and for some content you're like required to have a group mate and stuff. And that's what's like really good. You actually benefit from playing with others. And when you look at like retail WoW, like even the leveling experience, it feels like almost like a single player RPG game. Unless you are spamming dungeons, right? Which is probably like the fastest way to level. But if you only do like the storyline, it's like a single player game kind of. And this is like what I love so much with Classic WoW. Like the social aspect of the game. It feels like a true MMO to me.
All that leveling that takes place before is kind of just a hurdle that Blizzard keep accelerating, reducing experience needed, making Elite Zone less dangerous, the heirlooms, the LFD.
Yeah, it's because we're like retail that way, right?
In Classic, you start at level 1 with next to nothing in your bag. There's no idea that you are the hero or there to save the world.
And everything feels like an accomplishment.
To deal with minor, trivial problems, to deliver items, to report news. Gradually, you work your way up the levels and take on larger threats and do things which are worthy of merit. But even in the face of some of the largest challenges the player faces, there's always the idea that you are a smaller part of something bigger. In later expansions, there might have been a quest to go and defeat Cthulhu or Kel'Thuzad, and for you to be rewarded after having done that. In vanilla though, you defeat them, and then you get an item which you can turn in for a reward. It's a small difference, but it's details like these which matter. And in some ways, for me personally, it's almost vindicating after all this time to see something centered around leveling, such as hardcore, being so popular. I spent Classic
pure
leveling
adrenaline
each
from
class
it.
to 60 as I just...
Like the reason why WoW Hardcore, like Classic WoW Hardcore is so popular is because of this adrenaline, right? Like you can see this if you watch like streamers on Twitch, how they are so nervous each time their health drops like 30-40%. It's like almost their heart stops beating for a second or something. Like it's the excitement because it's just so difficult. Like you know what you're gonna lose if you die. But it also gets stressful at some point. I feel like the thing about like Classic WoW Hardcore is like the longer you play, the more stressful it becomes because you know what you're gonna lose. Like early game, it's all fun and cool, but once you're like level 40, for example, you start to think, whoa, what if I die now? I'm gonna lose everything, right? I mean, they did introduce something where you can like move over your character if you die and stuff, right? But still, it feels like you're losing your character because you're no longer in the hardcore world. Like even if the character gets moved. So yeah, it becomes really stressful once you're like high level. But it's the adrenaline that keeps it so much fun, exciting. It's the same when I, for example, play like Minecraft hardcore, right? And I put the difficult, everything's like max, right? And I'm hardcore. And then I'm going into like some cave and then skeletons, zombies and stuff appear. Like my heart beats really fast. Or if a creeper's behind me, if that thing blows up and kills my character, my beautiful house that I spent already 4 weeks building on is going to be gone forever. It's like that.
Just prefer doing that more than the end game content. You heard people say they hated classic leveling so often to where you would believe that enjoying it was a niche thing, but clearly that's not the case.
It's so fun, actually.
Classic set itself apart by being full of items that wouldn't have even been considered for a few seconds, by a modern design team, such as Magic Dust, a rare drop from a level 18 or so mob that instantly applies a 30-second sleep. Gnomish Mind Control Cap lets you take control of much higher level players. Goblin Rocket Helm, another instant way to CC a target for a long time. And there are many more examples. This total lack of anything being balanced kind of worked in a way for vanilla though. If everything's overpowered, then nothing is overpowered. It's just up to the player to grind, farm, and straight up be more of a degen than the next guy to come out ahead. And in some way, that's very much what MMOs are all about. But as Classic has progressed, Blizzard has started to become more hands-on with their changes. Back in Vanilla Classic, I remember there being a community uproar over changing water textures. There was even someone who made an add-on emulating what the LFD did for vanilla, and people lost their minds over it so much that Blizzard added new restrictions to the add-on API to prevent things like it from working. In fact, the blue post where they said they'd be doing this is probably the most upvoted blue post I've ever seen. Whereas nowadays in Warcraft Classic, among other things, we have cross-faction battlegrounds, class changes, major gameplay updates such as the Titan Rune dungeons, account-wide collections coming next patch. Oh, and the WoW token too. A lot has changed in Classic since 2019.
Yeah, it's not like the vanilla experience.
And for the player base too. I used to get the idea that vanilla to Wrath Classic were the classic games, and beyond that things changed significantly. But I think nowadays that line of there being a before and after for the classic version of the game just isn't as clear as it used to be. And in some ways it does feel like there is a divide happening, which could actually work out quite well, to be honest. Why pick between continuing with expansions beyond Wrath or having seasonal updates in vanilla when we can have both? I can tell you 100% that hardcore being as popular.
Yeah, but to have both you need to have enough players. What if the game gets less and less popular over time and then you have like so many versions of the game? Then it's like there are dead realms, or from 5 populated servers you suddenly have only 2. Like the thing is, like, it's okay to have like multiple versions of a game, but that's something also I feared when like Classic WoW came out, that so many from retail will move over to Classic, right? And now you have Classic in also like pieces. You have like the original Classic WoW, then you have Classic Wrath of the Lich King, maybe you have Classic Cataclysm, and you have like suddenly 3 versions of the game. Oh, and Hardcore. I'm sorry, Hardcore, I forgot. So you have like then 4 different WoW Classics. But the Classic community, let's say there's only an active player count on, okay, I'm just guessing a fantasy number, okay, that's maybe not true, but let's say there were like 2 million active players. It's probably less than that, but let's say there were 2 million active players in the classic version of the game, right? And now you have like sub versions, right? You have like 4 different ones. So let's say 2 million players, they have to go, like they spread on 4 different ones. So now suddenly it doesn't feel so popular anymore, right? Because you have fewer players. Like that's actually a little risk there. Like if you make this all into like pieces, a portion of the player want this game, a portion this, like you need to have a large enough community for this. So they need to analyze first of all if that even would be worth it, and then they need to maintain those. And that means if there are bugs that are appearing, they need like employees to fix that, and they need to hire those and pay those as well, right? So I would definitely say like this has to be worth it for them.
As it currently is only a good thing for vanilla fans worldwide, irrespective of whether you actually like hardcore or not. If Blizzard see this many people willing to go back and play the game again, that tells them that it's something that's worth investing into again.
They could try some polls or something.
And at the end of the day for Blizzard, a sub is a sub, whichever version of the game you are on. As for the prospect of moving forwards into Cataclysm, I still maintain the first raid tier, that being tier 11, so Throne of the Four Winds, Bastion of Twilight, and Blackwing Descent, is
I actually think Cataclysm wasn't so bad.
An expansion Blizzard have ever made, and is also up there among my personal favourite
tiers
of all time.
And Goblins.
The Firelands was also very highly rated by many players, but then we get to Dragon Soul, and people don't like Dragon Soul. Maybe it's the end of tier raid letting the whole expansion down, when typically the end of expansion raids so far have all been pretty great.
Boss.
I mean, we have had mediocre raids before.
What I actually hate here so much about this raid is the part where you get on Deathwing's back. and you have to pull those magma golem thingies or blood golem, whatever they're called, and you have to like kill them on one side so they explode then, and then the armor opens a bit and you get to the next. I actually hate, I think this is like my least popular boss fight in the whole of World of Warcraft. This one on the back of Deathwing is so annoying.
Now Hyjal, revamped Naxxramas, and even our current raid, Trial of the Grand Crusader, come to mind, but none of these
and
are
some
at the
people
end
in
of an
groups are
expansion.
stupid.
Maybe
They will
that's
actually
what
stay on the other
difference
side
is.
and not move
When
with
everyone's
you.
in that final tier, that's when the biggest payoff comes for your character in terms of power during the expansion. Anyways, the point is, with options of having both versions of the game, there could be a world where raiding content mainly takes place on the current expansion, but those longer term goals in terms of leveling characters can take place on vanilla realms in between this.
You should tame
in
this
fact,
one.
with Classic Hardcore having come out recently, that's pretty much exactly what I've been doing. I mean, running Ulduar for Flare of the Heavens, which just never exists, and doing Trial of the Grand Crusader is not the most thrilling content at this point in time, but it doesn't take that long, and I definitely want to do ICC on 25 Heroic. You've got to gear up for that. Though there were many changes with Cataclysm that people don't look back on too fondly, such as the old world revamp, it appears as though vanilla in some capacity will still be there, just on a different part of the Battle.net launcher. And that just seems like a good thing to me. Also, who knows, when we were going into Wrath, Blizzard removed the LFD from the game. They even made a point to announce it straight away, as I guess they thought it was going to be a super easy win. And then the players went, hey Blizz, where's the LFD? Put it back in the game for over a year straight. And now we're getting it in the final patch of Wrath. I genuinely wonder if this is going to happen again with LFR. Cataclysm raiding is a step up, you know. If those participation numbers drop enough, Blizzard might feel it's time to put this system back in the game during Dragon's Soul, and if people ask for it too, well, who knows what could happen. But for the time being, to be honest, the future of Classic is looking pretty great. We're about to get Icecrown Citadel, the second big hit in terms of raiding during Wrath of the Lich King. Classic Hardcore is going very strong. It's definitely early days, yes, but make the most of it while you can. Classic Era has gained a huge amount of traction, both from
and I've noticed that sometimes people that are like endgame of Retail WoW, they actually try now Wrath of the Lich King as well. Not just like the large amount that came to it, like when it first launched, but now you have like some old school players from Retail actually try Classic. That's actually really good.
vanilla enjoys
it's bad for retail because less
as well
people.
As I imagine a constant influx of the Fallen from hardcore servers. BlizzCon is in early November, the first actual physical BlizzCon in how many years now? Surely they
because
will
the
want to
pandemic,
make some kind of statement
unfortunately.
with that return. It also lines up very well for news on Cataclysm or
and now the world's getting
Wrath.
more normal.
Also, maybe there's even news for the next seasonal WoW server, and perhaps we can will Classic Plus into existence and Blizzard commit to adding new content to Classic instead of just doing expansions again. We can dream, right? Either way, in about 6 months or so time.
But is it worth it to make a Classic WoW Plus? Can't they just develop like a new project, like a World of Warcraft 2? Like, I don't get it, because like this also costs money, right? And time. If they save those resources for a bigger future project, because there will be in the future other good MMOs coming out. There will be a competition for World of Warcraft. There are going to be new technologies. You're going to have like maybe at some point Unreal Engine 7 or 6 or something. Like stuff advances as the years go by. There needs to be at some point a new World of Warcraft. Like look at other famous games. Like look at, for example, Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Technology advanced. They made a Skyrim. And now there will be at some point Elder Scrolls 6, even Black Desert Online. Where they're not talking about they want to make like a new version of Black Desert Online, like a completely new MMO or something. I heard like some leaks or some rumors that in a couple of years they also want to make a new MMO. So will Blizzard make a new MMO soon or not? This is something I'm like wondering now. Or they just want to build on something already existing, make the story even bigger and more complex so new players can't even catch up at all and they end up in a chromy mess.
Classic as a game
this is what
is going to be a very different landscape, literally and figuratively. So the
I love the franchise.
Is,
I want the
Blizzard,
franchise to get a
first. What do you have in store for this game? And that is it for today. Bit of a ramble this one about the state of the game going forwards. I am genuinely optimistic for the future of Classic, seeing how well different versions of the game are currently doing. What do you want to see though? What direction do you want Blizzard to take the game? And what are you expecting from BlizzCon this year? Let me know below. Also, quick reminder right at the end of the video, if you do want Wrath era servers to be a thing, you should start asking for it on forums and stuff.
Yeah,
now.
then they will.
Anyways, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all on the next one very soon.
Wow. Yeah, I think like Classic will not die super fast, for sure. Like the hype is going to be up for at least 1 more year or even longer. We'll see about that. But yeah, I think there needs to be a new MMO project, and please in the World of Warcraft franchise, because I think World of Warcraft as a franchise itself is a very potential, it's a very good one. Like even the World of Warcraft movie wasn't as bad as some people said it was actually. Yeah, they could have done a better job with the movie, but there could be actually a World of Warcraft sort of series or a second movie even. There could be a new Warcraft strategy game, like a Warcraft 4. There could definitely be a World of Warcraft 2 that takes place maybe 100 or 200 years later, like a large time skip. And yeah, and for example, like all the old characters we know of, they're no longer alive, of course, because of maybe war, age and stuff. The only ones that can like really live long are the elves, and we can keep some of them around for like World of Warcraft 2. A few maybe have passed away because of disease or war, right? And we only see like 2-3 characters maybe return in World of Warcraft 2, and all takes place like 100 years later or something. I think that would be so cool. And while they develop this, we get like 1 or 2 more classic WoW updates and like 1 more expansion for the World of Warcraft 1, right? I think that would be a good plan for Blizzard. I hope they get into it at some point, because I don't want to freaking die from old age and not have ever had the chance to play a World of Warcraft 2 with like modern technology. Like this is still my like life dream, right? That one day I get to play a super modern World of Warcraft before I die. Will this ever happen? I feel the same way actually about like Elder Scrolls 6. When will they finally like develop this? Bethesda needs to develop this. Blizzard needs to make a WoW 2. Let's see about that. Let's see what the future holds for gaming. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section on how you see the future of Classic WoW. I give it definitely maybe at least 1 year. With Cataclysm Classic would last longer, and then the hype goes down. I don't think like Mists of Pandaria Classic will be fun, but let's see. But yeah guys, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time.